to talk about some of the basics of makeup. I was inspired by my sisters, my older sisters, because of our differences in how we wear makeup. You know, I'm over here at my vanity. I got drawers of stuff, different brushes, like just too much. And my sisters are like, they've got their powder, they've got their mascara, they've got their lipstick, they've got their brow pencil, and that's it. Well, one sister just has her lipstick. So I was like, you know what? Not everybody is doing what I'm doing. Not everybody is sitting down doing like wing liner and graphic liner and cut creases. Most people are just, you know, wanting your basic, I just want to put some stuff on my face and go to work kind of life. So I decided, you know what? Let me talk to those people. So today I'm going to focus on primer, foundation, and concealer. And then I'll probably do other stuff in other videos. Like maybe I'll do brows and mascara. I'll do cheek stuff, lips. Yeah, but I think if I did it all, it would be a super long video. I'm not here for that. So let's go ahead and let me tell you. Primer. Word on the street is that if you're going to paint a wall or something, you need to prime it first. I've never painted a wall, but I'm pretty sure that that is correct. So, same thing goes for your makeup. You want to put a primer down before you put on your foundation and other base products. Now, before that, you want to make sure that you have already washed your face, moisturized, and put on some sunscreen. I'm assuming that you did that. And now you're coming to your makeup with a clean, moisturized, sunscreened face. For primers, some people say primers are good and necessary. Some people say you don't need that. You definitely need it for painting, I'm pretty sure. But for makeup, you can go without it if you want to. My preference is to always use a primer. The reason that I want to use a primer is because I like that barrier between my foundation and my skin. And also I find that primers just do a little, like something different. For example, this is the Milk Hydro Grip Primer. This primer is sort of in a gel form. So once you pump some of the primer out, you can spread it out and it will dry down to having a bit of a tacky feel. So here is the primer on my hand, and I'm just going to blend it out. So you want to let the primer sink in a bit, because as it sinks into your, sinks into your skin, it becomes tacky, and that is what can help your foundation to stay on. This is one I will say that doesn't necessarily do much for keeping my oils down. It's just one that's going to keep my foundation on. Another one I have is the Tatcha Liquid Silk Canvas, and this one has more of a lotion type of look. So there we go. And the reason I like this primer is that I do feel like it gives me a silk canvas. So if you can see, it's sort of like smooth things out and blurred it a bit, and then you can go ahead and put your foundation on. Now these two that I have just mentioned are definitely on the higher end of product price. So I do know that there is one that e.l.f. has that is really similar to the Milk Hydro Grip. e.l.f. actually has some pretty good primers, as well as NYX and Milani. Those are the drugstore brands that I often tend towards, that I've kind of always worn. Another one is Makeup Revolution. I haven't been able to find that in my drugstores, but I am able to find it in Ulta. And Ulta also has all the other ones I just mentioned. Do they have Milani? Yeah. So they have all of them. So you can definitely go to the store and get some primers that aren't super expensive. Part of it is, again, going to depend on what you're looking for. Maybe you want one that's gripping, that keeps your foundation on, or maybe you want one that's hydrating, that gives you a glow. Maybe you want one that's matte, that kind of cancels out that glow. So it's really up to you to decide what you want. In terms of a primer, you only need a little bit, like you need a drop or two, and you just want to cover your entire face. And then you want to let that primer sink in before you move on to the next thing, which is foundation. Now for foundation, you have some choices, and thankfully, more and more brands are also making choices for deeper, darker skin tones. So you've got your skin tints, and those are like tinted moisturizers. They're pretty light coverage. You've also got your liquid foundations and your cream foundations, stick foundations, and powder foundation. So I started out with powder foundation. Like, I know it's made a comeback now, quote unquote, because the younger folks are like, oh my gosh, what is this powder foundation? And the older ones were like, that's what I started with. I started with some powder foundation. I think it was CoverGirl. And right now, the powder foundation I have is the Fenty one, and I also have the Gucci one somewhere. What I like about powder foundation is that it is super portable, especially if you have one that has a sponge in it. Side note about the sponge. I used mine this morning, so it's a little dirty. Please wash your sponge. Don't forget to do that, because what we're doing is we're patting this sponge into our product and putting it on our face, then putting more product on it, putting it on our face. And so it can become just a mess, a gross mess. So you want to make sure that you wash your sponge. You can use some hand soap or a mild sort of soap. Just rub it on the sponge, rinse it under water, squeeze it out, let it dry, put it back in your compact. What else I like about powder foundation is that usually you can build the coverage. So let's say you just want to put something on real quick just to give you an even skin tone. You can do that. But if you're like, I want to amp up that coverage, you can go back in with your sponge and just tap more onto your face. You can also use powder foundation with brushes. So I'll save tools for another time, because there are so many different things I want to tell you. So when you use a brush for powder foundation, it tends to be a more diffuse look. And when you use your sponge, you can really make it more concentrated, and it's going to give you like fuller coverage. So again, when we're talking about coverage, we're talking about the level of coverage that your foundation is giving you. When you have something that is light coverage, like a skin tint or a tinted moisturizer, you can pretty much see your skin still. You can see your freckles, you can see any sort of marks you have on your face. Like, it's not going to take away from just natural what you have going on. If you're moving on to a powder foundation or maybe like a light to medium coverage, then those products are going to cover a bit more of whatever's going on your face. Now, cream foundation is one that I don't have because I tend not to wear cream foundation, but that is something that is pretty similar to your powders. Like, oftentimes they come in sort of a pot or a compact, and you have the ability to adjust the coverage. I also have stick foundations. I think this is just like the second stick foundation I've used. This is the one from Huda Beauty. And here it is. A lot of people like stick foundations because how easy they are. Similar to the powder foundation, is very portable. You can take it with you. And for stick foundations, you just want to swipe on a couple of lines of the stick foundation and then blend it out, and there you go. What I found personally for myself is that a lot of stick foundations don't last on my oily skin. So I end up either just kind of staying away from stick foundations, or knowing that it's just not going to last forever on me, or setting everything with powder to help it kind of stay on my face. What I typically use day to day is liquid foundation. So I often will use a matte foundation. This one here that I have is the NARS Soft Matte Complete Foundation. This one is my favorite foundation ever. I have not found any other foundation where I'm like, I really, really like that. Like, I like the Fenty one. I don't know what's in here, but I love it. So this does give a soft matte finish. So soft matte is almost like satiny. Like it is matte, it's going to stay on, but it's also not like dry and cakey. This is, I would say, a more full coverage foundation, but you can make it a bit sheerer if you, more sheer? More sheer. Make it more sheer, right? I don't know. If you use a little bit, or even if you mix it in with your moisturizer. So you could always take a drop of this, a drop of your moisturizer, mix it together, and then put it on your face. So then it's not as full coverage. If you want to like not always have it be full coverage. The other one that I like is again from NARS, and it's the Natural Radiant Foundation. Now this one, basically the foundations often tell you what you're gonna get. So the NARS one says soft matte, and this other NARS one says natural radiant. So I know I'm gonna get a matte finish with one, and I'm gonna get a natural radiant with another. I like to use this one when I know I'm not gonna have like a super long day, like it's just gonna be like a regular 8-hour day, because it doesn't hold up for me as well as my matte foundations. The nice thing about this though, for those of us who have oily skin, I find that the Radiant Foundation really does make me look radiant. It does not make me look greasy. So yeah, there is that. So those are your foundations. So before going into concealer, I do want to make a stop at corrector. So some people use color corrector, some people don't. It's really just up to you. I typically don't, but sometimes I do. Now, so for color corrector, you are trying to correct or counterbalance a certain color on your face. Oftentimes, for those of us with a darker skin tone, we might have those more pigmented spots or dark areas. And so a color corrector that can often be used for deep and dark skin tones is one that is more orange. And so what you want to do is you just take that corrector and you put it onto the areas where you have some hyperpigmentation. So there are correctors that are in a stick form. This one is from e.l.f. and I really like it. You then have color correctors that are in a liquid form, almost like a concealer. This one is from Fenty, and this shade, Pumpkin, it's real orange. Like it might be darker than an actual pumpkin. So you have to be careful with this. If you're around my complexion, maybe a little bit lighter than me. If you're deeper than me, you might not have to be as careful, but this can make me look like a pumpkin real fast, depending on how much I use. So basically you would take your color corrector, whether you have it in a stick form or a liquid form, and you would tap it onto the areas in which you have some darkness. So the next thing is concealer. Now, concealer can be used for a variety of things. If you have a concealer that is similar to your skin tone, you can just use that concealer to spot conceal, meaning just putting the concealer on areas that you want to smooth out in terms of color and tone, and you can just be done with that. Or you can use your concealer to highlight, and you can also use it to contour. So if you have a concealer that is your skin tone, this is one from Makeup Revolution. It's their Conceal and Define concealer, and I have it in the shade 16, which is the same as my shade in the Conceal and Define foundation. What you can do is to take your concealer and just put it on areas that you want to cover up a bit, and then you can blend everything out with some powder. So concealer can be used for areas of your face where you want a little bit more coverage, if you want to lighten certain areas like under your eyes, and oftentimes concealers are often smaller in terms of packaging and amount than your foundations, because it's more pigmented. It's not necessarily meant to be used all over the face, even though some people do. So I want to show you how I use some of these products. I'm going to take my Tatcha Silk Canvas Primer. And I'm going to go in with my Fenty Eavesdrop Blurring Skin Tint and shake it up. What I like to do is to just put on some on my face. And then I can use my fingers to blend out. So as you can see, I've got some coverage, but also you can still kind of see my skin peeking through. So on the other side, I want to do some powder foundation. And what I'm going to do actually is take my concealer. Which one do I want to use? I'm going to put some concealer on this side with the skin tint. And because I'm going to use a powder foundation on the other side, I am going to put my concealer on first because I like to have liquids put on before powders. So as you can see, I'm doing it after here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and do it before here. If you look up while you are patting in your concealer, then that can help to not have it caked up too much in your fine lines. So there is the side with the skin tint. This is the side with just the concealer. And now I'm going to go in with powder. I'm going to put the powder on as powder foundation on this side. And on this side, I'm going to use the powder to set everything. Actually, I want to be extra, so I'm going to use my Gucci powder. Now, there is a puff, and I'm just brushing the puff across the product. And you can do several things. You can swipe, or you can dab, or you can sort of press and roll. Third thing you can do is you can use a brush. So if you use a brush that is fluffier, it's going to give you a more, like a softer, more diffused look with the powder. If you use one that is denser, like this, it's pretty tightly packed brushes, then you can sort of pat the powder into your skin. Now, that side is the powder foundation side, and now I'm going to set this side with this powder from Fenty. Now it is a powder foundation, right? So you can use a powder foundation or you can use a setting powder. I like this because it's just the same collection essentially. And there you go. So I've got the side with the skin tint and the powder on top, and then the side with just the powder. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I do my foundation that is liquid. So first I'm going to take the NARS Naturally Radiant Foundation. What I like to do is take the foundation and put it on this little tray. And I will grab my sponge, and I will definitely talk about tools at some point. I've already got my primer on. I used my Milk Hydro Grip. Now I am going to take my NARS Soft Matte, just in a different spot on the palette. One drop. Take my sponge. Gonna go in with some concealer. So here is my concealer. I also like to take my sponge and just kind of go over everything. I'm just going to use one of these powders and lightly tap into it and then set everything. So using this fluffier brush, I'm just going to set. I think the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I would use my color corrector. So I'm just going to take off half of my makeup and be right back. So I took off the makeup that was on this side, and I'm going to use my Fenty Beauty, what is it called? Bright Fix Eye Brightener in the shade Pumpkin. This is very pigmented, so I just want to take a drop of it. There it is. And I find that I just use my fingers to color correct, so I'm tapping into that. And what you're doing with your color corrector is putting it on areas that you want to balance out. So there is some redness here, or there's some darkness here for me, and here, and a bit under the eyes. So that's what I am going to, that's where I'm going to put my color corrector. So now that that is tapped in, now I can go in with my foundation. There is the color corrected side. Non-color corrected side. I'm just gonna freshen up my gloss. This is Milani Keep It Full gloss in Rosy Bronze. I think the next one I'll do is like powders and bronzer, contour, blush, and then also I'll be sure to do lips and brows and lashes maybe. Oh, I should do an eye look. Okay. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time.